We're now moving on to our last keynote and panel discussions of this conference. And I'd like to start with a very brief story as I introduce our keynote speaker. Just a few weeks ago, I was sitting in an airplane from Atlanta to Boston when the flight attendant made an announcement. We have some American soldiers on this flight who are just returning from Afghanistan, she said. Let's give them all a hand for the service they've done for our country. As my fellow passengers broke into applause, I hesitated. Could I really clap for soldiers? Wasn't that tantamount to supporting war and bloodshed? Now, the Americans in this audience might find my reaction absurd. After all, the flight attendant was just asking for a kind gesture. But for the Germans among you, I'm a German myself, my reaction might be quite familiar. And I think this reaction is the legacy of German history and our Nazi past, a legacy that I, who was born over 40 years after the war ended, still feel. And we spent much of the conference talking about Germany and its complicated relationship with its past and its complicated relationship with leadership. We've talked about Germany's position on international security, on climate policy, on the Euro crisis. And as we do this, what we're talking about is nations. And it's very easy to forget that, in fact, it's not nations doing leading or not leading, it's people. So really, we'd like to also take this opportunity with the keynote and the panel to talk about Germans leading, or as our conference title suggests, perhaps not leading. So what characterizes German leadership? How does our past still influence the way Germans perceive leadership today? Should Germans, given their past, lead at all? These are very complex questions. And so I am tremendously pleased to introduce Professor Karl Kaiser as the keynote speaker on this topic. Professor Karl Kaiser was born in Germany. He's now professor of public policy here at the Harvard Kennedy School and at the Weatherhead Center for International Affairs. He's previously taught all over the world at the universities of Bonn and Cologne, at Johns Hopkins University Bologna, at the Hebrew University in Israel. And he was also director of the German Council of Foreign Relations in Germany. Throughout his career, Professor Kaiser has been a tireless advocate for policy issues dear to his heart, including nuclear disarmament, global warming, and transatlantic relations. Moreover, Professor Kaiser was a policy advisor to two important German chancellors, Helmut Schmidt and Willy Brandt, both chancellors known for not shying away from difficult and historic decisions and gestures. Truly, Professor Kaiser has lived German history. Please join me in welcoming Professor Kaiser.